So today's guest is Tom Rumboll, and he approaches print in a very different and interesting way. He's a huge advocate of print, which is how I came to have the great fortune of working with him last year, which has continued into this year. Tom launched his company TR Advisory in 2019, following a very extensive career in senior roles spanning more than 2 decades. Tom's bio was absolutely packed to the rafters with experience and achievements, but he edited that bio right down to the 2 words that he's most passionate about, which is sustainability and people. So let's find out a little bit about Tom's story and about his passions that sit behind those 2 words. And let's hear how he uses print. He's a massive advocate. He flies that flag quite extensively. So welcome, Tom, to the Now Why podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here and to chat through all of these wonderful things. It's great to be able to hear your story and how you use print. So, of course, my first question to all of our wonderful guests is, tell me about the first time you encountered print and some of those aha moments that you had.
Amazing, thank you, and thanks for having me, Kay. I'm looking forward to sharing a bit about my experiences beyond print and print itself. So the first time I came across print, I was still in my CEO role with a company called Cinetic. And the progress that we made as a business led to that business being sold to a US PLC in 2021. That US PLC was subsequently bought by another US PLC in 2023. And it was there that the CEO of the much larger organisation, a fantastic business called Ritchie Brothers RB Global, the then CEO, a real powerhouse, super impressive, amazing lady called Anne Fandozzi. She was a huge fan of print, and I'd never come across print before, but as the CEO of the larger business, and she was a huge advocate, that's something that she really pushed down into the whole of the Ritchie Brothers RB Global business, of which there's 4,000 or 5,000 colleagues. So my first experience of print came from effectively the parent company influence, and having done, we might touch on this, Clarity 4D, Insights, Myers-Briggs, Belbin and variations thereof. I was absolutely blown away by the insight and the power of that insight that print gave. So my introduction, I didn't find it myself, it came to me, but in recognising the benefit and the power and the agency that gave me as an individual and my team, I've subsequently become a real keen advocate for it with the clients I'm dealing with now in my advisory work.
Tell me about when you first did that discovery session and you got your profile and obviously, you know, the profile for your teams as well, because I know that was a real aha moment for you, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. And we've had this conversation not on the record, but it was an aha moment. So what was the aha moment? It was that. It was uncannily, unerringly accurate in a much deeper way than the somewhat equivalent things that I'd done before. Wow, these things and emotions and threads and triggers, and when I'm at my best and when I'm perhaps not at my best, it all just became just so obvious. It was so obvious I'd not realised it in my previous 25-year career history. I kind of knew, but I didn't have the language perhaps or the to codify those descriptors and to even describe myself well enough, let alone others, to understand, you know, the causes of my motivations or behaviours or reactions. So that aha moment for me was absolutely huge, and it really did give me that clarity and a bit of validation, actually, as you know, it's absolutely right that I would respond and react in this way because this is what motivates me. So that was a piece for me. It was really, really powerful. Then understanding that for the board team that I was leading at the time, super powerful. For those guys to understand each other, right, another layer of amazingness. But then also, you know, it created a whole raft of other benefits in terms of permissions, the idea that you can be more positive in calling out unhelpful behaviour or recognising and celebrating best self and positive behavior. Well, I could talk all day about this, as you probably hope. So I'll leave it there for now. But my aha moment was understanding me better, and in doing that, really allowed me to understand others better. And it was just so powerful.
I think that's really interesting. You saying, being able to codify something and actually having it written in black and white, and having something that's quite tangible about things that you probably intrinsically know, but actually explicitly reading it, even those things that sometimes think, oh, actually that sounds quite sharp, or is that really me, or all those wonderful best self behaviors, absolutely, tick, tick, tick.
Yeah, I recognised all of those, and it was unerringly accurate. So if I was to score best self and shadow self out of 10 for accuracy, as a bit of an exercise that I tend to do with my clients, which we might touch on, it was 10 out of 10 on both. So that's one thing, you're able to recognise that, fine. But the really helpful bit is, why is that? What are the triggers, and how do you mitigate that? So it's almost that cognitive behavioural therapy piece where you think, well, I can be very mindful and be very consciously aware of these things in both best and shadow, and do something about it. And I think that point around unconscious motivators and the point you've made around it brings something that inherently but it's subconscious or unconscious, to a conscious framework and to a conscious level. And actually, that is the power of print, because it codifies that in a way that is consistent for everyone that undertakes it. So you're not talking a different language for a different person or a different colleague. It's the same. They all exist on the same spectrum, and therefore you can talk the same language around different triggers, different motivators, different best self behaviors, different shadow self behaviors, but it's all within a framework that is consistent.
And I love the fact that, what you said before is that it was introduced to you by an organisation that, was you then merged with. And it's almost that pollination, isn't it, of new organisations. And you've really done the same, haven't you, in TR Advisory, and of bringing print to your clients.
My career has been really varied in the sense that the foundation was built in the world of PLC, banking and all these great things. Then moved into food redistribution, then moved into advisory, then moved into salvage, and back to advisory. And there's not a huge amount that links those other than my motivators, which is I like to get results, and I like to be where I'm needed.
Right.
I now run TR Advisory. I am the TR in TR Advisory, and I advise ambitious businesses generally, so businesses that perceive they could do better, be better, and see potential in themselves and in their specific industries. So my role is pretty varied in the sense that I'm sometimes in a board advisory type role, so I'm just light touch advising shareholders and management teams, sometimes much more involved in terms of strategic documentation, writing of an independent business review that says, here's where you're good, here's where you're not so good, this is what you can do to be better, these are my recommendations, and if you want I can stick with you to then implement and embed those recommendations. Most of it is with an eye on value creation, and I guess the flip side of that value creation coin is exit readiness, and print and teams and high performance teams, because nothing happens without team. That's been a key part of my toolkit, shall we say, having picked up all these other things I mentioned from my corporate career and doing transformations and exits. The print piece has been foundational, actually, because you can't do anything without people. You can't do anything without a cohesive, aligned, motivated team. And if you can make that team a high-performing team, so much the better. But how do you do that? And what are the steps? Well, print is one of my foundational steps in terms of advice to my clients, to say, if we're going to go on this journey together, and it's going to be quite challenging, it'll be bumpy, and there'll be disappointments, and there'll be stresses and strains and differences of opinion. We should start with this first. And that is a very, very long-winded answer to how I use print, but I use it as the foundational step in the creation of a high-performing team, which is what I would always diagnose my clients will need to deliver the kind of value creation and transformational change that is often required to take the business from where it is to where it could be.
So it's really interesting, isn't it? Because I've obviously, had the pleasure of supporting you with some of those very senior teams in the respect of your foundational piece of having them printed. And we've done that over a number of months, haven't we? As that kind of first step to what does that then look like going forward. So can you share with us any of the kind of impact that print has had for those teams, or, after the fact that they've, been printed and they've had a discovery session, and then there's the focus on their unconscious motivators in the context of how that then shows up as a board, as an SLT, as an organisation, and the impact that it's had. Can you share any of those insights with us? Because I think that for those listening, this is really interesting around how this tool can support in a much wider piece.
Lots of people in private businesses, sadly, don't get much personal development. It's not high on the agenda. I know that's it's a real sweeping statement, but I think the hypothesis holds true that if you founded that business from your garage, or your grandfather or father passed that business down to you, and that's all you've known, you wouldn't necessarily know what is out there. Yeah. So I think to make that point, that the power of print in these businesses is absolutely massive, because one, it'll possibly be one of the few things they'll have ever done that is about them, personal. It's about personal development, and the whole cliche, the best investment you can make is the one in yourself.
Yeah.
They might have role specific training, they might have got health and safety and all that, but actually this is going to help me be more effective as not just as a colleague or as a member of staff, but as an individual, because that clarity then gives, and this is, I guess, the key benefit as I've seen it, is it really does give permission to colleagues to call out when they see unhelpful behaviour in a really safe, constructive way, because it's about disagreeing without being disagreeable, and it might be about the response rather than that. You're challenging the response, not the person. And print gives that toolkit and that language and that framework and that permission and that agency, which is so amazing, because it often, and again, back to family business or private business, there won't be that professionalism or necessarily that decorum to understand or know how to disagree agreeably, or how to challenge the idea or the behaviour and not the person. And that is huge, because if you think about one of the foundational principles of a high performing team, it's solid relationships.
All that stuff that you've just shared there is just a wonderful example, isn't it, of kind of dynamics of a team, whether that's a professional, we don't know each other than from a working perspective, whether it's a family run business. So actually you've also got the dynamic of those relationships of, brother, father, son, daughter, whatever that might be. So that also adds in another layer, doesn't it, of unconscious motivators and relationships, and the best version of us and who we turn up as.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I suppose the interesting point around boards and management team effectiveness, you want to avoid groupthink. Again, slightly overused term, but it's amazing how many traits or unconscious motivators follow in family heritage, which actually, just as a spin-off benefit, knowing that is powerful, because it's very easy to sit in an echo chamber, certainly towards the top of a business or the top of any organization. People often I'm drawn to these people or that person because they think the same as me. And obviously, as comforting and reassuring as that might be, that's probably not the recipe for a really, really high performing business. The diversity of approach and thinking and motivation would be, I think. So that idea that even just knowing those different motivators and styles is really, really powerful, such that you can look at and observe, have I got balance or have I got diversity of thought and of motivation across my business and across my team? Because if father, son, daughter, and other sibling are all of the same mind, that could become a bit of an echo chamber. Certainly in the work that I do, family-owned businesses or private businesses, there's more concentration. I would be my observation of similarities of the print numbers, because 5 of the X or of the board will be from the same family, or 3 will be immediate family, and often you can see the same or very similar unconscious motivators, which is absolutely no surprise, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just more about, well, one, we're all better for knowing that, and two, let's then just watch out for that groupthink and that potential lack of diversity or challenge around thinking.
I love that. For me, it's always about application. You can do as many profiles as you like, and you can get a colour or a letter or a number or whatever that might be. But that is absolutely the whole point of, so how do we use it? And so what do we do with it? And, and how can it help us? And I think you've told that story beautifully, Tom, and I've loved all the different, that little squiggle of path of all the different ways that you've applied it and used it, and how you've brought it to your clients. So if you were to share one like golden nugget of best practice, or something that anyone that's listening, whether that's a coach or somebody interested in print, what would you say would be one of your, golden nuggets of sharing with others?
If it wasn't obvious already, I would say do it, and do it ahead of some of the other team, which is nothing wrong with any of those, but I think there's more impact. There's more impact with print than, and this is from a direct personal experience, case having done all the others, or many of the others, which were, by the way, really, really good and really, really helpful. This is not a good or bad. This is a good, better, best. For me, print is the best. So my first advice would be to do print. It's not a panacea. It's not a magic bullet. But anything you do after print will be better informed in the context of the individual and the team. So I think it works really well from a company perspective, almost like that line manager understanding that, but also really well from an individual to help manage their own career perspective. Because if you thrive on praise and recognition, and culturally that business isn't that, or how it's set up, or the personalities, or the culture, you'll perhaps never be fulfilled or happy despite delivering consistently, because there's a mismatch between the environment you're in and the things that unconsciously motivate you. And knowing those things is really, really helpful from an individual career management, whether it's within a business or actually the decision to move from one organisation to another. And again, helpful from a line manager to understand the motivations of their team. Like, what's not to like about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. You're not an accredited coach, but you are absolutely an advocate of really understanding the tool, application, and how you can use it, and that those real tangible benefits that you've experienced for you and for those around you. I love that kind of pollination that's happened as a result of that chance of somebody in your organization coming and delivering print. So
absolutely, yeah. And I guess my good fortune really to have been in the right place at the right time in a number of ways. And I think it's possibly the story of my career, to be honest. I'd like to think some of it was some level of capability, but that's the real thin end of the wedge. Quite a lot of it is hard work, and I think the balance is luck and timing, really, Kate. But yeah, my good fortune really to be able to experience that, because that is what I try to sell effectively. You're a family business or a privately owned business that wouldn't necessarily know about some of these things, and the benefit I try to bring is the added value. So there's no point in me doing the same things as the business already does. They probably could do them better anyway. My job is to bring a different perspective, a different network, different thinking, and different tools that I've been lucky enough to have used over my career, and print is one of those.
And I think all those things that you've just shared, you can absolutely see how those two words right up front, that people and sustainability, are absolutely shining through, aren't they, for your unconscious motivators? So a little question I always ask my guests is, if you was to describe your unconscious motivators in whatever shape or form you want to, how would you describe yours?
So I'm a 3-2. So first and foremost, it's my unconscious motivator is 3, to get results, deliver results. So no surprise, I've always leaned towards roles in my career that have been results driven, business development, be set a target, try and beat the target. I'm like that outside of work in lots of areas. And the 2 is very much to be needed and appreciated. So what's the analogy? I thought about this, and I would say it would be a sheepdog.
Okay.
You have to stay with me on the analogy, which is, if you think about what a sheepdog, tons and tons of energy, tons and tons of enthusiasm, but hyper focused when there's serious work to be done. So absolutely locked in on, and if you ever used to watch these things on Sunday night TV, really, really well trained, like really, really disciplined, really, really focused, but delivering that with like loads of energy, enthusiasm, and then kind of when the whistle goes and the job's done, like really partial to having fun, running around, and partial to some acknowledgement and recognition afterwards. Yeah. Very much like a dog would, bound up to the master, wagging its tail furiously, wanting the praise and recognition for delivering a job well done. So it took me a bit to think about how I would best describe that, but I think
love that.
That is me.
I don't think I'm going to be able to see it other than being a collie now.
for all the reasons I mentioned, I would say that would be it.
Brilliant, love that. And I ask all of my guests this last question about, we've got a playlist, we've got a motivational playlist, and we invite everyone to add their favourite motivational song onto that playlist. So if you had to choose one, what would be your go-to tune or song or whatever that might be that really gets that sheepdog going?
Yeah, another good one. So the things you wouldn't necessarily know about me, I love dance music, house music. A DJ on SoundCloud for anyone that wanted to find me, LGRTR. Come and join my other 231 followers. So I'm really into music. I've got thousands and thousands and thousands of digital tunes in my digital record box. I play it at various places, parties and what have you, as well as releasing mixes. So it'd be a house music tune. Fatboy Slim, Praise You.
Nice.
1999, the year of my graduation, living my best life. Everything was ahead of me. But the lyrics work, the hook, the drop. It's just such a classic tune, and that is my go-to favourite tune of all time, for a whole heap of reasons I've just mentioned, musically as well as the memories that it connects me to.
Wonderful. Well, it's a pleasure to add that to our list, and every time I hear that now, I am going to be thinking of you bounding through a field chasing sheep. So before we wrap up, Tom, if anybody wants to get in contact with you, what's your contact or preferred method of how can they kind of drop you a line?
So LinkedIn preferred, I would say, but it's tom.rumboll at tradvisory.co.uk by email. I'm not sufficiently, you'd be surprised to know, but I don't self-promote enough to have websites and all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Tom Rumboll. Nice picture of me and the Queen in a Queen's Award some years ago, or TR Advisory LinkedIn page, or if you like house music, on SoundCloud, LGRTR.
Marvellous. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've loved talking to you today. What fun. And thank you so much for bringing your experience to life for us and sharing that with all of our listeners.
No problem.
So thank you all very much for listening. This has been a great episode. So remember, like and share. Join us next time to hear some more wonderful stories about all of those people that love print and advocate for print. Thanks, Tom, for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, Kay.
Take care. Bye-bye.